Hey, hope everybody is having a great weekend. Not much going on here, just cumulus, and you can see that there's very little motion on these clouds. There's motion through the clouds, but overall we've got very light winds aloft. So, taking a look at the weather outside, we've got a live cam, so we can check out what's going on outside. If we have any afternoon, evening thunderstorms, we'll be able to cover that and show a little bit of those clouds out there. Anyway, let's head to the current forecast, or the current charts here. Actually, there was something I wanted to bring up. The Colorado hailstorm back on Monday, May 8th. There was a storm that hit the western suburbs of Denver. That was back around the Lakewood area. And I don't have permission really to show any of these clips, unfortunately. That's kind of a big pain in having to get, to send out messages and wait for people to respond. And a lot of times people don't respond. So I'm just going to have to run you through the meteorological charts. And here we've got the GO 16 satellite data for earlier in the afternoon. So you can see there's some mid-level clouds in here along the front range here. And as we roll this forward later during the day on May 8th, we see things rapidly go up during the afternoon. There's one storm out around the Lyman area between there and Denver Airport and along the mountains. This is what we're watching here, and especially right around the Mount Evans area. So we go a little bit forward, and you can see it becomes completely covered with anvils, so we'll have to look at the radar data. So here's the radar data, and this is the storm we're watching. This is around the Mount Evans Meridian Hill area. And we'll roll this forward. Severe thunderstorm watch quickly in effect here. And the mountainous area is mostly back in this region right here. So the storm is about to come out into the flat suburbs of the city, and this is Lakewood right here. This is where a lot of people got into trouble there with a lot of the hail. I think a lot of the videos online are in this area right here, and you can see the storm moving out into that region there. Very high reflectivities. And usually when we get into this dark purple color and white, values near 60, 70 dBZs, that almost always involves hail, especially wet, large hail. That's the best reflector for radar energy. So that's pretty much what's going on there. So we go a little forward. This is about 2:45 p.m. Mountain Time. And there's a storm heading northeast through the Denver area. It's got a little bit of a bow echo appearance here. And we see what looks like a little bit of what could be a rear inflow jet right there. Kind of a notch on the backside. That's one thing you kind of have to watch for. And then continued very high reflectivities, and I'm seeing a value right in there of about 72 dBZs. It's about as high as it gets. Okay, so let me roll that forward, or roll that back a little bit. And let's take a look at the three-dimensional structure. I'm going to do a cross-section through the storm. For those of you just joining, this is the Denver hailstorm back on Monday. So, looks like we got some overhang there, definitely. So this is the forward leading edge of the storm. There's the inflow into the storm, and it looks like we've got a bounded weak echo region up there. So if we go up to the higher tilts, we should be able to kind of pick that out here. Yeah, that looks like the bounded weak echo region right there. And And let's roll that forward just a little bit. So we're looking at the higher tilts within the storm. I'm just checking to see if I see any more of that bounded weak echo region. I think there may be some of that right there. There's the three-dimensional structure, so you can see that overhang. So what's important right here, very high reflectivities up there at 20 to 30,000 feet. So we see values well over 60 dBZs. And that's one of the indicators that the hail algorithm uses. It looks at the freezing level, how high these values are above that. And let me just show you a couple of the hail products real quick. Probability of significant hail. You can see values of, let's see here. Yeah, values, this hollow area right here, this is 100%. And then maximum estimated hail size, we're looking at values in the 1 1/4 range. And then the purple down here, this is getting up above 2 inches. And you can see for a brief time up here in the Westminster area, 2.5 inch hail expected. It looks like this algorithm actually did pretty well. So anyway, that's another product you can use. That's in the level 2 data. And I don't really use the level 3 data too much, like JR level 3, but I suspect some of those hail products are in there also. Okay, let's check out what's happening today. Looks like pretty tranquil on the Great Plains. There's Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. There's Colorado. Seeing a little bit of snow up in the mountaintops there and a little bit of cumulus. Just not very much going on today. But definitely as you go out to the Pacific Northwest, we have a lot of cloud material, and this is telling us we've probably got a lot of cold air aloft there. So we'll be looking for an upper level trough in that region. Here's the 250 millibar chart for the northern hemisphere and the North Pacific there. Very large trough across the Pacific Northwest. This is the west coast here, and this is Alaska. So we've got a low pressure area around Vancouver this evening. A lot of ridging across the Great Plains, and that's associated with a lot of warm air in the low and mid levels. And that's helping to keep things kind of capped, keeping things shut down. And then we've got the troughing in Nevada and California there. Polar front jet is running something like that right there. Here's the trough, and here's the ridge. The inflection point is going to be right about there along the polar front jet, and that's going to correspond to roughly where we're going to find the low pressure area associated with the polar front. So just a quick rule of thumb right there from that inflection point southward. That's going to correspond to where the cold front is, and then the warm front's going to be right there. So it looks like we've probably got a polar front from Utah down to Southern California, and maybe a warm front around Montana and the Dakotas. And that's just a quick look at the 250 millibar chart from SPC, showing the polar front jet right there, back behind the polar front. 700 millibar chart looking like this. Ridge across the Great Plains. And we can also see some of the higher temperatures, 10 and 9 degrees Celsius. That's going to outline some of the capping. And you can see it tends to cling to the mountainous areas. In fact, a lot of the cap is generated from the plateau area in the mountains, and we see it get lofted eastward during the morning and afternoon. So a lot of these warm temperatures, those will move eastward when we have westerly flow, and that will tend to reinforce the cap over the Great Plains. So it's a combination of that advection and subsidence underneath the ridge. And then the 850 millibar chart looking like this. And you can see we've got moisture values down in the lower left of each plot. So we have to think about whether that's dew point depression or dew point. And for that, we just go up to Canada and look at the values there. -4, -1. That's going to be dew point. Okay, so dew point's around 4, which is about 40 degrees Fahrenheit at 5,000 feet. 6, 9, that's going to be 40s dew points. So very weak moisture, and it looks like the better moisture is well to the south. So we can see a little bit of a return flow pattern setting up on the high plains, but we're just not tapping that moisture just yet. It's going to be at least a couple days before we get that coming up in force. There's the satellite picture showing a little bit of high base thunderstorm activity in the northeast Wyoming area. You can see that moving up just north of Sturgis there. So we've probably got a little bit of moisture in the low levels, and we'll just take a quick look at that. And I can see we've got maybe a 3 value. That's going to be values in the upper 30s at 850 millibars. And then when we get out here, we're getting into the mountains. So we would really have to look at the surface chart to kind of assess the low-level moisture field. But it looks like there is just a little bit of moisture, enough to get these storms going up there. Okay, then we move on to our isobars and thickness. And so this is going to be what our fronts are going to look like, and it looks a little bit like what we had yesterday. So this kind of confirms a polar front from Utah down to Southern California and then up to Montana and through the Dakotas. So everything is consistent and looks good here. The cold air aloft over we can see that right there around that upper level low, around Seattle and Vancouver. And the strong southwesterly flow across the Great Basin and Rocky Mountains. That's basically just carrying these surface systems northward into Ontario and Manitoba. So until we get a good eastward push of the upper level trough, that's going to be the case. A lot of the systems are going to be going up into the northern plains. Okay, and then we'll take a quick look at the soundings. I'll bring up a sounding for Rapid City, slightly ahead of those thunderstorms there. And we see what looks like a fairly dry air mass. Not much capping. So that's the capping layer, and we can see that 700 millibar temperatures right around 10 degrees Celsius. That's a little bit warm, but we do have quite a bit of cold air aloft just above that. So I'm trying to figure out where the moisture is, and then we go back. Let's check out Denver. Looks like maybe a little bit of weak moisture in the low levels there. Then I'll take a look at North Platte. Not much moisture there either, so we would have to take a look at the surface chart to see where that moisture is, and it's probably between all of those stations. Okay, let's see what we got next. We'll take a quick look at the upper level dynamics. And there's the current chart right there, and we can see that most of the upper level wave action mostly affecting what Montana, Wyoming, and Utah there, maybe a little bit of the western Dakotas, maybe a bit of western Nebraska there, and most of the Great Plains itself underneath this big ridge here. So the actual ridge axis, basically from Dallas up to Omaha and up to Fargo. So the trend over the next day or so, by the time we do the webcast tomorrow night, it's going to be looking like that. You can see pretty much the same as what we had tonight. Southwesterly flow, not much of an eastward push to those troughs, and we're just carrying the waves up north into Manitoba and Ontario. And then by Monday, it looks like maybe there's a little bit of an eastward push. Still most of the wave action from Colorado up into the Dakotas. But we're starting to graze parts of the panhandle here in western Kansas, so we may see thunderstorm activity increase a little bit starting on Monday. And then for Tuesday, we're looking like this. Now we've got trough action in the central and part of the southern plains, so we should see chances of thunderstorms go up there for Tuesday. Okay. We'll take a look at the forecast on the GFS there for later this week. And before I do that, let me take a quick look at the chat, see what we got going on here. Okay, Robert Terrell, first one in. Ryan Toomey's checking in, waiting on the last flights arriving from Dallas, Atlanta, LaGuardia, Newark. Weather delays in the northeast U.S., backing up flights, but nothing catastrophic. Mark says, good evening, Tim and chat. Kevin McKinney, good evening. Eddie W. here, and Jamie Hammonds, good evening from Austin. Got quite a few viewers there in the Austin area. I know Ancient Astronaut is from that area, and I don't think I see him in here. At Megan John, Minnesota, 80 degrees underneath that ridge there. Greg Schultz, hoping for severe weather for Wisconsin. Will OTC, planning his drive down south Monday to get staged. Melody Loves Jesus, good evening from southern Louisiana. Sue M is here. Hello. Good to see you here, and yeah, has been a while. Had to recuperate a little bit during this week. Ron Chalfant checking in. Ryan Toomey's, anyone think the last 2 weeks in May will be an eye-opener for the alley? Well, we've certainly got the potential with these long waves, or these troughs coming across the Central Plains, and we'll check that out here very shortly. Mike Estwick checking in, and Fun with Tech, talking about that storm there in Denver that trashed cars and roofs and windows. Mike lives in Arvada, Wheat Ridge area, and he got a little bit of damage there on his cars. But Ryan mentions it's been pretty quiet this year in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, basically the Great Plains. And that's true, and that's given us not very much to look at. Sarah Wood is here from Indiana, and Ryan Toomey's. Sarah thinks the patterns are going to start picking up, and Mike Estwick says, good to see you back. Same to you, and D. Reynolds, hello from Gillette, Wyoming. A little bit off the beaten path there. Okay, let's check out these waves here. This is kind of a look at the upper level patterns at 500 millibars. We start out this evening. You can see that big trough on the west coast. And then by Sunday, we see not much change, and then for Tuesday and Wednesday, part of that trough starts moving into the Great Plains right there, and you see that moving across Kansas and Oklahoma there. And here comes another trough down the back side. That'll probably take a similar trajectory. So here we got Thursday morning, some more strong flow coming into the Central Plains here for Thursday going into Friday. So I think we'll probably start getting into kind of an active pattern here starting Tuesday and Wednesday. Then by Saturday and Sunday, it looks like a lot of that moves up into the Illinois, Wisconsin, Great Lakes area right there. So this is Sunday morning. Then we get our next round coming in from the west. Flow aloft is pretty strong, and you can see we do not have a ridge on the Great Plains here at the start of next week. So we should see storms continuing through the start of next week. The next trough comes in around Wednesday. Then we see a little bit of a ridge starting to build in, but not particularly strong there. The pattern is a little bit more zonal than what we've had over the past week. And that brings us to the end of the sequence. Monday, May 29th. Got a pretty decent trough going through Kansas and Nebraska there at the end. So there we go. So that's what's happening there, and we'll take a look at the surface patterns. In fact, I wanted to look at the moisture. That's one thing we should be looking at this time of year. What I've got here is the 925 millibar dew point. This is up at about 2,500 feet, and this takes us slightly above the surface. So this is kind of factoring in moisture depth a little bit more. And let's see what happens over the next few days. Things stay pretty dry, but a little bit of moisture making it into Texas there. So it looks like dew points will start coming up starting tomorrow. A few 60s dew points there at 925 millibars in Kansas. So we should see the dry line start to become established right there. So for later in the day on Monday, looks like the dry line will be just west of Amarillo and west of Garden City. There's the moisture coming up north along the Caprock, and there goes one wave up in the northern plains. Upper level flow is kind of moving like this. And then Tuesday will probably be our first significant storm day, and you can see the dry line is pretty well set up right there. So you see that right there. Big change from Monday. See how Monday looked? Not very organized, and then for Tuesday looked like that. So big change there. We can see the air behind the dry line, very well defined. So probably right along the Caprock up to Dodge City is where we're going to be looking at for storms on Tuesday. So then for Wednesday, we've got a little bit of erosion of the air behind the dry line, or the moist sector here. So the dry line is mostly set up here in Texas, not so much in Oklahoma. I think probably part of this is some of it gets eroded by the storms there, maybe a little bit of fast flow up in this Kansas area. But in any case, flow coming back up the I-35 corridor for Wednesday. Flow rapidly building in there for Wednesday night going into Thursday. And then we've got the dry line set up right along the Caprock once again for Thursday. So another dry line day along the Caprock. Then for Friday, very similar picture. Lost the frame there. Okay, there we go. So there's where dry line is, very well defined, all the way up to South Dakota. Then for Saturday, looks like we've got a front coming down south from Kansas and Oklahoma. So there's the leading edge of that right there. So it looks like that front stalls there in Oklahoma and the Texas Panhandle. So for Saturday, a week from now, there's the front right there. Let me go back a few days. Let me just check out one little thing here. Just Trying to figure out why that moisture was eroding there on Wednesday. Yeah, I think it's got to be some subsidence moving through that area right there. Okay. Anyway, back to the weekend. So this pretty much suggests that mostly Texas and Oklahoma will be under the gun for thunderstorms there. You can see we've got very good low-level flow coming up from the Gulf, bringing in that moisture. So good chance for storms there around the Abilene area out to Midland and Lubbock for the weekend. So you can see this 925 millibar dew point chart, very valuable for determining what's going to happen as far as storm activity. So the only question is whether we have capping and upper level troughing aloft. That's the only thing that can really shut things down. So there's that flow coming up from Texas once again for midweek. So once again, we're looking at things pretty active in the southern plains there. And then for later next week, looks like another front comes down, pushes things back into Texas and Oklahoma. So most of the chasing will probably be in this area next week. And then going into the Memorial Day weekend, looks like the flow moves more up into Kansas and Colorado and Nebraska. So probably some chase potential in eastern Colorado right in that area. So anyway, there we go. Okay, so that's about all I got for tonight. Again, not very much going on today, but certainly things will be active for next week. So let me take a quick look at the chat here. And Kevin says, Elk Mountain, Wyoming surface chart reports a thunderstorm with a dew point of 28. So that's definitely going to be quite a high base storm there. Storms checking in from Fort Worth, Texas, pattern change incoming, and Sarah Wood looking for an active weekend here next week, Thursday through Saturday. Okay, well, I appreciate you all watching, and hopefully we'll see you all tomorrow. Take care.
Thank you.